The whisper that started it all. Was there something more behind Jungkook's silence? Why did hospital staff choose to remain quiet until now? And what really happened during the nights no one saw? When Taehyung lay unconscious after his military discharge, a soft murmur started it all. A nurse on the third floor of a private medical facility in Seoul made a quiet confession to a close friend over coffee. "I've never seen anything like it." Jungkook didn't leave his side, not even for a second. And just like that, the world began to unravel a story that had been kept behind closed curtains. The whispers became questions. The questions turned into curiosity. And then, before anyone realized it, fans across the globe were asking the same thing. What kind of bond does Jungkook share with Taehyung that would drive him to such selfless lengths? When BTS's Kim Taehyung, known to millions as V, completed his mandatory military service, fans anticipated his return with open arms, smiles, and possibly a celebratory live stream with his closest brothers. But instead, news came that hit like a lightning bolt on a cloudless day. Taehyung was being hospitalized. The cause? Complications reportedly due to extreme physical exhaustion, immune deficiency, and undisclosed health symptoms exacerbated during the final months of his enlistment. But what no one saw coming was Jungkook's role in the days that followed. Hospital insiders initially refused to speak on record. But slowly, pieces of the puzzle emerged. And with each clue, the story painted a portrait not of tragedy, but of unshakable loyalty, unquestionable brotherhood, and the kind of emotional devotion that can only be forged through years of silent understanding and deep emotional connection. Taehyung, unconscious for nearly 36 hours, had no idea that someone was gripping his hand through each moment. That someone never left the room. That someone skipped meals, ignored rest, silenced his phone, and even refused visits from others just to ensure the room remained calm, just to whisper, "I'm here." That someone was Jungkook. A timeline of silence in the earliest hours after Taehyung's hospitalization. Big Hit Music released a brief, almost clinical statement. Kim Taehyung is currently receiving medical care after completing his military service. We ask for privacy during his recovery. No photos. No elaboración. No visitors allowed. Just silence. But silence doesn't always mean stillness. According to a former assistant to one of the hospital's lead physicians, the very night Taehyung was admitted, a man in a cap and mask slipped quietly into the building. He wore no makeup, no luxury brands. Only a gray hoodie and a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Security let him through without questions. The assistant, who agreed to speak under anonymity, later said, "I knew it was Jungkook immediately. There's something about the way he carries himself, like he's both ready to cry and ready to protect someone at the same time." And protect he did. Room 712, a restricted VIP recovery suite, became Jungkook's new world for the next 7 days. He refused outside help. He refused to leave even when his own health started to show signs of wear. It wasn't just duty. It wasn't just friendship. It was something more profound. He pulled the chair next to Taehyung's bed and didn't move for hours. Sometimes he'd hum. Sometimes he'd just stare. But I think the thing that struck me the most, the assistant continued, was that he looked like he was mourning something. Not that Taehyung was dying, but like he'd already decided he would give up something to make sure Taehyung didn't. Hidden notes, unread texts, and the prayer that broke everyone. A nurse found it during a routine morning checkup on the 4th day. A small, crumpled paper on the side of Taehyung's bed. It was folded 4 times and only had one line written in black ink. "Please wake up. I'll sing anything you want. Just wake up." JK, it was never meant to be read by anyone else. But that note became the turning point in how staff began to see Jungkook's presence. It wasn't just that he cared. It was the desperation behind his quiet strength. He didn't ask for cameras. He didn't post an update. He didn't even tell Jimin at first. He simply kept writing. The staff later found 3 more notes, folded inside Taehyung's notebook, all of them filled with phrases like, "Do you remember our last promise? You owe me that late-night run by the Han River, remember? I still have your bracelet in my pocket." Perhaps the most heart-wrenching moment came on the 6th night. According to a technician monitoring the heart monitor, Jungkook began softly singing a song, Taehyung's favorite scenery. The technician, already in tears, left the room after 5 minutes because, in her words, "It felt like I was watching something sacred." The next morning, Taehyung opened his eyes. When Taehyung finally opened his eyes, the morning sunlight filtered softly through the thick curtains of room 712, drawing long shadows across the floor. A tray of untouched food sat on the side table, still warm from breakfast delivery an hour earlier. The room was quiet, so quiet that the steady beep of the heart monitor sounded louder than ever. Jungkook sat in the same chair he hadn't left in nearly a week, his eyes closed for what must have been only a few minutes. His head leaned back slightly against the wall, exhaustion written all over his face. And then something changed, a slight shift, a flutter of fingers, a blink that lasted longer than usual. A soft, dry cough. Jungkook's eyes snapped open, the stillness of the room breaking under the pressure of that tiny, almost imperceptible movement. For a second, he didn't believe it. His heart thumped wildly, louder than the machine's. And then he saw it. Taehyung's hand twitch again, this time curling slightly as though reaching for something. His eyelashes lifted slowly, as if waking from a dream he wasn't ready to leave. Taehyung opened his eyes, and the first person he saw was Jungkook. There were no dramatic gasps, no sudden words. Just a quiet moment that felt larger than the entire world. Jungkook's hand instinctively reached forward and took Taehyung's fingers in his. He didn't speak at first. His voice had been trapped behind prayers and sleepless nights. But Taehyung, in a whisper so low it was almost inaudible, said, "Are you still here?" Jungkook swallowed the lump in his throat. His voice cracked as he replied, "Of course I am." And then, for the first time since being admitted, Taehyung smiled. Faint, weak, but undeniably real. The tear that fell first, what happened next wasn't recorded, documented, or shared on social media. There were no selfies or tweets. It was a private moment, raw and unfiltered. But a nurse who passed the room at just the right time described what she saw, and it's a moment no fan will forget once they hear it. "I saw Jungkook stand up, still holding Taehyung's hand. And then he just broke," she said. One tear. Just one. It fell silently and landed on the back of Taehyung's hand. He tried to hide it, but it was too late. Taehyung turned his head slowly and whispered, "Don't cry, Jungkookie." To which Jungkook replied with a trembling voice, "I thought I lost you." Those 5 words held everything he had kept inside. The nights spent whispering to a sleeping friend, the days wondering if he'd ever open his eyes, the guilt he hadn't shared with anyone, especially the guilt of not being able to protect him during those harsh military months. Taehyung gripped his hand tighter. "You didn't lose me," he said. "You saved me." The letter Taehyung wrote but never sent in the following days. Taehyung's recovery picked up pace. Physical exhaustion was his main hurdle, but with every hour that passed, he grew stronger. And as he spoke more, slept less, and smiled wider, it became clear to staff that this bond, whatever it was beyond even family. On the 3rd day after waking, Taehyung asked for a pen and paper. Jungkook, always nearby, handed it over without asking why. Taehyung took his time. He wrote slowly, deliberately, pausing every few minutes to breathe, then continuing. After an hour, he folded the letter and slid it into his drawer, and no one saw what was inside. Not even Jungkook, but when Taehyung was discharged 5 days later, he left the letter behind. And he told the nurse on duty, "Give this to Jungkook if I ever forget to." The nurse, unaware of the storm the letter would later cause, kept it safe. But it wasn't until weeks later, when Jungkook returned for a checkup on Taehyung's behalf, that he was handed the envelope with 2 words written on the front, "In case I couldn't say it." Jungkook didn't open it in the hospital. He waited until he was alone, and when he read it, he cried for the second time.